You have like your account with your file.
Will be a bit because the other meeting just ended. So other people, I'm sure, are trying to get on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Eugene, you do have the spreadsheet, yes, to be ready with the presenters.
Actually, I don't have the spreadsheet.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Can you send it to me?
Susan, do you have it there to tell him who the first one is, and we'll send it to him?
Oh wait, is it the same as last week's spreadsheet? If so, I
Yes,
have.
they're all the whole
Eugene,
month.
it's the same one as last week, yeah.
Okay,
If
I
you've
have
got
it.
that one. There
Okay,
has-
let me just go get it.
Yeah,
I think Andy makes number 7. 2, 3. And Albert is 8. We'll wait just another couple minutes for people careening in after the last meeting. You're okay, Eugene?
Yes, I have it. Thanks.
Okay. This is the landmarks meeting for Community Board 2, the second of 2 meetings this month. A little bit before we start, the applications we're hearing this evening are all of them that were scheduled. Before, we've been having a great many cancellations. The chat should be only used for technical problems like not being able to be recognized if you're raising your hand. Be sure to stay on mute until you're speaking, and be sure to unmute when you do speak. The applicants, please ensure that what is read is in fact what you have presented tonight. Occasionally these have come in early and there's something else or there's some mistake in them. So just be sure, because that's what we plan to hear, whatever is spoken. We ask that everyone be brief in their speaking. We've allotted 15 minutes for each of the applications to be presented in order to ensure that limit a great deal of the background and parts that don't really have to do with this application. And if examples should be in the neighborhood as close as possible to the subject, and preferably we'd like to see ones that are approved by the commission unless they are genuinely historic examples. Following the presentation, we'll have questions by the committee, questions by board members, guests, and then the public. Public comment is limited to 2 minutes for an application and only once per application, please. And the business session, everyone's invited to stay, but only committee members may speak, and any board members who are here will be invited to make final comments before it begins. Susan, would you read the first one? I need to redo my paper here.
Sure. The first one is 133 West 3rd Street. The application is to install gates in front of the railings of the building.
Okay, and I've promoted Heather Lee, who is the presenter for 133 West 3rd Street. Heather, if there's any other additional people on your team that you'd like to promote, just let me know. I think you're on mute, Heather.
Oh, whoops, sorry. Hi guys.
Hi.
Hi. Yeah, so I will be the only person that will be presenting this evening. I have no other team members that will be joining us.
Okay, and you should be able to present your screen.
Okay. So I will share screen. Just want to make sure that you guys are able to see this.
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Right. Hi. Okay. So good evening, everybody. Let me introduce myself. My name is Heather, and I actually represent Heritage Collection. And we are the master tenant at this building that's located at 133 West 3rd Street. So this is basically how the building looks like, you know, like the facade. Okay, so maybe just let me walk you guys through. So we're located at West 3rd Street. In between, it's a very busy area. We have the West 4th Street basketball court, the 7-Eleven, to the left, and to the right would be Blue Note Jazz Bar. So as you can understand, you know, this area is, you know, very crowded, very noisy, lots of traffic. Okay, so just to show you, yep, so this is where we are. And this is just, you know, the surrounding, the businesses in the area. I want to give a little bit more background to what we do, which relates to why we are seeking an approval for the installation of a gate. Okay, so yeah, maybe I'll just like do it here. Okay, so we are a provider of fully furnished apartments for students and interns in the area. Because of the proximity to NYU, a lot of our tenants are actually undergrad students who are looking for off-campus housing. They typically stay with us through the academic year from September to May. And in the summer months from June to August, we typically rent out our apartments to interns who are in the city for their summer programs. Okay, so that's the nature of our business. And as you know, hence a lot of our tenants are actually very young. They are usually range between, you know, 20, 22 years old. And a lot of times we are, you know, their parents entrust the kids to stay with us. You know, they want to know that it's a safe location, you know, and that we have staff members who are dedicated to make sure that when their children stay with us, they are taken care of, you know, and we help to provide that reassurance to our tenants and their parents. So, you know, okay, so this is basically the building, you know, in the past and, you know, at the time of designation, and this is the building now. So, so that brings us to why we are requesting for this gate. You know, we have been struggling for a very long time with people who are loitering at the entrance of our building. So we have, people who are drunk, under the influence, they sit at the stoop, they pass out at the stoop. And this has, resulted in a lot of fear and anxiety in our tenants. Basically, a lot of times when they go home, they have to step over a body to get to the door. Similarly, in the morning when they have to go for classes, it's the same thing. We have tried many ways, we've called the police, we've engaged outreach services, but, it's just a very temporary kind of help that they provide. Yeah. So I guess that's why, we want to add the gate, which is for added security and, just to act as a deterrent to prevent them from, coming and sleeping by at the entrance. So the design of the gate is really, really simple. We recognize the historic values of the railing at the building, and the gates are designed in a way, to show that they are subservient to the railings that are historic. And at the same time, I want to share some examples of buildings which have obtained approval. So one of them would be this one at 79 Christopher Street, at 17 Grove Street. And I think latest, just in the past few weeks, there was an approval given to 133rd West 4th Street. We've also gotten our tenants to share some of their feedbacks about this. So I'm sharing with you one of our tenants, Peter. So as he has mentioned here, he frequently had to step over people who are sleeping or perhaps pass out on the steps. They hassle our tenants sometimes. This has created a serious impact on his sense of security and general mental well-being. We do have photos, but, we just didn't think that it would be appropriate to include them here. And this is a second tenant. So, they lie in front of the door, and, they just wouldn't leave, and it scares our tenants, remembering that these are really young people, in their early 20s. And a lot of times they have never even been out of their home country or their state, and they're only here for school. That their age coupled with the city, the area, it's really sometimes a shock to the system. So this tenant, even said that the person who was sleeping outside just held on to her leg and did not let her move. And, she really feels very unsafe and, scared to go home. Staff members have attempted to report, but at the same time, we also fear retaliation. Yeah. So, that concludes my sharing session. I am happy to take any questions that, you may have.
Are there questions from the committee?
Yes.
Eugene, whoever.
Brian, yeah, I can
You're
handle the questions. Brian, go ahead, please.
Yes, thank you. Ms. Lee, how many units did you say were in the residential part?
We have 10 units, but a lot of them are 2-bedrooms. So you have 2 students staying together. So, we have about 20 students in the building.
And does that include 133 and a third, the horse walk that goes to the back of the building?
Yes, that includes the rear building.
Okay. So does the rear the horse walk door you are not having the same problem there?
Yeah, that's a lot lesser. Let me see if I can show you. I think it's really because there isn't like a stoop. So this is the door that leads to the rear building. Yeah. And unfortunately the car is blocking it, but there is like no stoop in front. So usually we get a lot of like the issue in this area.
Yeah. Okay. So you may have listened into some of our other meetings where we do very much discourage gates on our buildings in the village. One thing that strikes me for this particular application, as opposed to many of the other examples that you correctly had found that have been approved in other buildings, they tend to be anything from single family to a smaller number of units in a townhouse. Or the last one, the most recent one, was a parsonage. But this one is, I could see that it does get a lot of traffic of the students or the tenants going in and out quite often. The problem is that not when the gates are closed so much as when they're open. And when they are left open, there's nobody there to control it or to close them up. And it's a very narrow sidewalk. That particular piece of sidewalk is reduced to something like 3 feet, I believe. So I tell you what, I walk around the village and I can practically not walk anywhere around the village without coming upon a gate that is left open. Is out in the sidewalk, which for me, I'm a sighted person, but for somebody that doesn't have that capability, it could be very dangerous. One other thing, a point I'd like to make, and that is that the current steps that go to that particular door where the gate is proposed, you have a building violation. The first step is 5 inches. The second step is 6 inches. The third step is 7 inches. And the fourth step is 8 inches. That is not allowed in the building code. And I would encourage you to consider remedying that for safety of your tenants. Thank you.
Right. Yeah. Yes, I hear you. So I represent the master tenant, but I do believe that the landlord is currently working with LPC to remedy the other violations at the entrance, including the stoop and the railings at the side. So I think it's currently being they're working on it. Yeah. And I do hear you on the gates that are being left open. What we have in mind that perhaps I could share would be, so the gate actually consists of 2 smaller gates that's latched in the middle. What we could do is, we have one side of the gate to be secured into the stoop, so that's not.
I don't think we have to solve that problem since the new steps are not before us. But I'd like to ask why this is not being done as one submission if the steps are to be corrected reasonably soon, and the railing, it would seem to be that it's premature to put this particular with respect to the railing and the steps.
I think because like it's the landlord that's working on restoring the steps and the railings. I only came in later to the picture where we highlighted this problem to the landlord, and then we were being introduced to landmarks. So we were both like working on like separate
Well,
stuff.
it also, this attaches to the railing that presumably is going to be changed. Is that correct?
Yes. I think in fact the railings have already been approved, and they are probably in the midst of like fabricating it in accordance to the designs approved by LPC.
Well, then, and what about the steps?
I do not have any updates on the steps.
I would think that that they both have to come to us. I can't imagine the railing being.
Mm,
I would like to suggest that you try to get a consolidated program for this section of the house, because much of our decisions are made on how something lies in context. And if the steps are vastly different or the railing, that may color how we would view the gate. And then we'd essentially need to reapprove it or undo what we said. So it's just not a useful way to approach this several step renovation.
okay, yeah, I hear you. I will take it back.
We'll consider how to
Yeah,
word it in the thing, but if you understand.
yeah, of course, I
the position
understand.
we want to see the whole, in other words.
Okay.
Okay, are
Okay,
there?
Albert has his hand up and I have my hand up. So Albert, go ahead.
Just a matter of clarification. This is really an application, not just for a gate, but for a gate and a new fence, correct?
The gate is only just for this area. So I'm not sure.
Behind that gate, there is a new fence.
The railings, at least the ones.
No, on the east side. If you show us the present situation,
Okay.
there
yep.
is no fence there.
Oh, yes. So the railings, there should be two railings. So there should be one on this side, this one here.
So that should be part of the application.
Yeah. So I think there's a separate, the landlord of the building is working separately with LPC on the railings and resolving the other violations at the entrance.
Okay, are there other?
Okay, I was just
Okay.
going to say, pretty much related to what you had to say, Chenault, which is that I don't see how we evaluate the gate without having a firm understanding of what the rest of it looks like, particularly the railings, because we have no sense of what the visual relationship is between the gate that's being shown to us and the railings as they are going to be. I'd like to ask you, Ms. Lee, is there a relationship, do you know if there is a relationship and what that relationship might be between the railings that the landlord is presenting to LPC and the gate that you are proposing?
I can find the proposed drawing if you could give me a minute.
I guess you can also just answer my question, is there a relationship between them? Was the gate designed with any visual consideration of what those railings are?
Oh, so yes, we have consulted LPC. Basically the railings are historic, so the railings are very detailed. And the gate has to be very simple to show its subservience to the railing. So that's the guidance we've been given. And hence the railing, it's meant to be very simple.
Okay, but I still think
we have
it's very
enough
difficult for us to evaluate without it being part of an entire program. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. There's nobody else from the committee, but there is a hand up, Jeffrey Rowland. And Jeffrey, if I'm mispronouncing your last name, please let me know.
So Jeffrey, I'm gonna permit you to speak.
You are pronouncing my name exactly correctly, and thank you for that.
You're welcome.
No matter how you rule on this in any case, or whether it comes back to you for railings and gate together, in either case, it appears that the gates on either left or right will open, and the one on the left will open onto someone else's property. The one on the right will open to in front of a staircase leading up to another entrance. So in either case, they would be obstructing. So my concern would be that you install only gates that are both self-closing and self-latching, if you should allow this at all. My general feeling about gates like this, as I pass one frequently on my way to the supermarket, is that they are always open, they are always in the way, I am always running into them, and I'm always closing them for the tenants, or trying to. In many cases, they can't be closed after some years of wear because they sag or they don't fit anymore. Somebody's leaned on it and it's gotten bent. So I would be opposed to allowing a gate here. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there others, Susan?
Let me just double check. There don't appear to be. Nope. That's
Okay.
it. Say to-
Okay, thank you. And you'll be able to see from our resolution exactly how we decide to deal with all this unusual problem. Next is 242 Lafayette Street. If you would read it, please, Susan.
So for 242
Sure,
Lafayette, I had,
242. Oh, sorry, Eugene, what?
no, go ahead, sorry.
Oh, okay. 242 Lafayette Street. The application is to replace the second floor north windows, 2 on the front facade and 4 in the rear of the building to replicate previously approved work.
And my apologies, Susan, for talking over you.
No, no worries.
I was looking for the presenter. I have Glenn Drews, but I don't see Glenn in our list of attendees. So if someone could, if you're the presenter for 242 Lafayette, please raise your hand. I will promote you. Susan, I don't see anyone raising their hand.
So you don't see anyone from this application?
No, there doesn't appear to be anybody
Okay.
here for this.
And nothing that matches the
application.
name we have?
The
That's
only
the
name I
only
have
name we
is,
have.
Okay, we have 2 more, so we'll just at the end of the meeting look to see if they're here and hear them then. If not, we'll deal with it as we usually do. Next is 52 Greene Street.
Okay, 52 Greene Street. The application is to add 2 new stories on top, plus a penthouse to a 3-story building and to install new windows throughout and extend the fire escape to the roof.
Okay, when you feel everybody's here, we'll start. Everybody's upgraded.
Eugene, are you upgrading Corey Davies?
Hello, good evening. I have one slight difficulty is that my audio and video is on my phone. So I also joined on my computer. So if I do need to share screen, I got to do it on the computer. Is that the way we're working this, or do you present the
I
presentation?
don't understand. It's difficult for you to share the screen. Is that what it is?
Yes, because I'm on my phone, so I'm logged
Eugene, are
in 2
you equipped
places.
to share if he calls the pages?
That would be
is
great.
the problem that you have, are you logged in twice into our,
Yes.
okay, if I promote the other logins for Corey Davis, would that help?
Yeah, that would be
It
great.
should.
Oh,
Okay. Yeah, Mr. Davies has logged in, I think 3 times, and so let me just promote all 3 of them, panelists.
Alrighty, that worked out perfect.
We're good. Thank you. Thank you, Eugene, and thank you, Corey.
Alrighty, so this is a 2-story addition on top of a 3-story building. So I apologize if this presentation is lengthy. We'll try to go through it as quick as possible because we do have a lot of drawing details in here that's more applicable to LPC specifications for being historically accurate.
Right, in that case,
So
you would just, I think it's clear what we need to see.
yeah, so feel free if you want me to skip through any pages as I get deeper, if it's not relevant to
Okay,
what you need to see. So this first page is our overview, more or less showing where we're located within the Soho cast iron historic neighborhood. We are located in between Grand Street and Broome Street. As I said, it is a 2-story, it is currently a 3-story building. On the left-hand corner, we have our existing elevation. In the center, our existing photo. And on the right is our basic site plan of what we're proposing. So moving on to the next slide. This brings us to our historic tax photo on the left. That predates about 1939, 1940. This is our main guiding path to trying to recreate the historic structure. So this 2 stories that we're looking to recreate were lost in a fire. One of the major Soho fires, I believe, in the early 1900s. But actually, I'm sorry, mid 1900s, because the tax photo is 1940. And we are really using this photo as our guide to have all the brick ornamentations, the scale, the window, the fire escape, and bring everything back to life from what it was originally. So moving on, this is our mock study. So on the left here, I'm just going to zoom in a bit, is our existing conditions. Moving on to the right is a schematic of what you would see from a front view. The red outline would be the 2-story facade. That's about 20 feet tall. And the blue would be the penthouse, which is the added piece to this that wasn't originally on the building and is included in this proposal. So moving on to the photos on the bottom. This is a view from down Greene Street. And it's looking to see if there's going to be any visibility of the penthouse. So on the right-hand side here, you can see that it's set back enough that it will not be visible. Only the front facade would be visible from this view. So our next slide here is some existing condition photos showing the front facade, fire escape, storefront, and some of the roof level. Whoops, sorry about that. Down here is a preliminary massing of the existing compared to the proposed. So the proposed is hatched 2 stories plus the penthouse. The right-hand side would be facing the front Greene Street. The left-hand side is the rear. Over here is a section and also a sightline diagram, further showing that from across the street, because it is a narrow street, only 50 feet wide, that the line of sight would not be able to see the penthouse. It is set back approximately 16 feet.
16 feet.
From the front facade
Yeah,
to the start of the penthouse.
16
Yep.
feet, right.
16, correct. So this is moving on to also mock-up studies of what the massing will look like on the street. So we drew it up in 3D. There's a map there in the center. The map shows A and B, and then A and B correspond with the 2 photos. The top being the existing conditions, the 3-story, and the bottom 2 photos being the proposed. The pink or purple color is the proposed addition. So that will be the 4th and 5th floor, and then the penthouse. So this view is looking from Grand Street up Greene Street. And then this next set of drawings is the same type of study, but it's from the opposite side of the block. So this would be looking from Broome Street. And as you can see with the neighboring buildings being taller than what we're proposing, the penthouse will not be visible. Now, moving on to a block study, we took a look at the existing conditions of the surrounding neighborhood and created this diagram which shows any rooftop additions that are close by. So anything hatched in the green map area are neighboring additions. On the right-hand side here is the existing conditions that we have with the green facade with our neighbors on the left and right. And on the bottom here is a schematic rendering showing what our building will look like once the addition would be done, and we would add those 2 stories plus the penthouse. On the left-hand side here is just a photo of that block study showing those additions that the neighbors had close by. So moving on to, these are our floor plans. This is more or less the existing conditions of cellar, first,
And you can
second,
leave
third.
this part from the, when you get to the roof, please.
Sure, the roof is the very last plan on
I'm
the
sorry, the
bottom right.
penthouse level.
The penthouse level, okay. So this is just the existing condition, so we'll skip through there. This is also the existing front and rear facade. The only thing that this is really calling out is that the windows will be replaced on the 2nd and 3rd floors. And we also have to take off a portion of the very top of the parapet where we're adding the new stories for that new connection.
Which is
so
presumably
moving,
new.
say that again?
The part that you're taking away is presumably something that was added to make the building usable after the fire.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, we actually identified about 4 courses of brick that seem to be newer. So that's what we're trying to go down to and not really go much lower. So that way we really are using the existing brick, existing facade, and seamlessly just going up from there. So these floor plans on this page would be the proposed floor plans, starting with the 2nd floor on the top left, 3rd, 4th, 5th, penthouse, and then the roof of the penthouse. One thing just to note is that historically, we do believe the 4th and the 5th floor was the full perimeter of the building. However, current zoning regulations are forcing us to set the building in about 2 feet. So that can be shown on the 4th floor of the rear of the property. There would be a 2 to 3 foot setback where we would make a small balcony or a terrace. And then on the bottom left would be the penthouse. Let me just zoom into that. So as you can see, it's about 1/3 the size of the story below. So it's not considered a story. The penthouse also has some terraces that it opens onto, which will have concrete pavers, some planters, and it will be a different material than the rest of the building. I'll show you some close-ups in some of the other slides. On top here is just showing that there's mechanical equipment on top of the penthouse and then is enclosed with some railings for screening. All right, move on from floor plans. Here we have front and rear facade proposed. So the way these drawings read is if it's solid white, then it's existing, although the existing is brick. And then we hatched the proposed area, so that will be the 2 floors plus the penthouse up top. When we were speaking with Landmarks, they also asked us to sketch in the neighbor on the right-hand side so we can see how the neighbor lines up with our proportions. There's also some survey points that we got from our land surveyor, trying to line up the existing conditions and then looking at the tax photo to really line up the rest of it. All right, the next slide here shows some more close-up details of the penthouse area. So the penthouse on these left-hand side views, this is the front and the rear of the penthouse, would be aluminum standing seam cladding. So it'd be a different material than the rest of the building, more or less to set itself a little differently and read a little more modern. on the right-hand side here is a close-up of the balcony on the 4th floor, and then showing that relationship with the new penthouse. On the bottom part of the screen here, we did some close-ups of the front facade, where we're trying to recapture historically the cornice, the brickwork, and showing section, elevation, and a 3D mock-up there. Alrighty, moving on to the next one. This is a building section, again showing the existing cellar through 3rd, and then we hatched in the new floors 4th, 5th, and penthouse. This is some wall type details showing that we're trying to rebuild historically accurate as far as the width. However, the internal materials, we're looking to use CMU instead of historically accurate. Would be more like 4 courses of solid brick. So in this detail sheet, we did do a more close-up, sorry about that, section here of the existing courses of brick, which would be 4 or 5 courses, getting up to the top of the 3rd floor, and then the new addition. So you see the relationship there with a new concrete bond beam tying together the new construction with the existing. So this is where we said we would take away a few courses of brick and add on the new wall, and seamlessly from the outside, everything would be lined up and we'd go with the same width. The other details on this sheet include proposed railings, proposed parapets, and some more details on how the brickwork and the parapets are done. All right, these next slides more or less show
I think
detailing.
you're getting into territory that's a little bit detailed.
Okay, so let me breeze through this. This is just detailing of the fire escape on the bottom and the aluminum cladding for the penthouse on the top. Moving on is the next 3 slides are close-up photos. If you want to see any of these closer, let me know, but these are existing conditions of the windows on the front facade, the fire escapes, the jambs on the windows, and the brick. So this first page is the front facade. The second page is the 3rd floor of the front facade. Also close up, seeing the arc above the window, the detailing, and the thickness of the wall. Moving on to this last page, this is the last photo sheet. This is the existing rear facade, showing that it is brick and it is painted over with a thick paint that looks similar to a stucco. So this is the existing condition in the rear, and we're looking to extend up with that new balcony. These next pages are blown up and detailed versions of the windows, showing the existing versus the proposed. The front facade, we're really trying to match historically exactly what was there, from the wood material and the look, the same glazing size, everything. The rear facade, we are looking to modernize a little bit more, keep the same amount of lights, but go with an upgraded type of steel in the rear. So those are all the blow-ups of the windows. Some of them have slightly different heights, so it looks like there's more than a few. All right, and then these are the last 2 slides here. These are schematic renderings. This one is a front-on view showing the building on the left and the right. And then this is our last slide with a similar view on the left, front elevation showing the correspondence with the buildings and the massing. This is actually a photo for the ground, 2nd, and 3rd, and then a rendering for 4th and 5th. So the existing photo shows here, so you can see the relationship with the rendering. And then the other 2 views are from the left and right sides of the building on Greene Street. And that would conclude the presentation.
Okay, I have a couple questions before we get into examinations. The penthouse is aluminum clad, and what color is it?
Dark gray, not a black, but more like a matte dark gray.
Dark red aluminum.
Gray.
Oh, gray.
Yes, gray.
And are the mechanical things on top of the penthouse visible from your studies?
They're not. I'll just go to one slide where we have them drawn.
I just missed them in the one you showed, so.
Yeah, I mean, here's our sightline study. So they're actually not sketched in, but I will extend that line so it can be shown. And the railing is a pretty small area of the penthouse that it's not tall enough to be seen.
Yeah, it's
And
far
then I
enough.
do have
away you
another
can
section.
Imagine extended.
Right.
Okay, questions from the committee, please.
Okay, I'm going to start with a question. The material, the brick for the addition on particularly on the front facade, how do you propose to match the existing brick?
So we've been in touch with a company that they can take a sample from the existing brick and recreate the colors.
Okay, great. And the cornice material?
So the cornice material, we were going back and forth with landmarks on that as to what historically it was. What we came up with is a metal cap so that the brick would really frame underneath and up to the top of the parapet. And then this would be a prefabricated type of metal cap that wraps around.
Okay, thanks. Would you mind going to the rendering of the front facade for a moment? I have a question there. Great, thank you.
Sure.
What is it in terms of depth or relief that makes the fourth floor windows where that arch is on the fourth floor look so very different from the existing on the floor below it?
So I believe it's a lack of shadow. Let me just see if this rendering is any better
I
there.
don't know if it's a function of the actual rendering or if it's a function of the design. So that's my question for you.
Yeah, it could be the rendering is what I would think, just because we are trying to capture the same kind of depth, the same design, everything of the arch. But as far as piecing
Because it looks
together
like
an
there's some
actual photo,
additional quality to the existing arch that I'm just not seeing in the rendering.
that's something that we'll look into closer. We are going with the same amount of layers, the same proportions.
Okay.
We're trying to count the brick and do the same there. So I'll look into
So
that.
you
and make
really
sure
are
that we're matching.
replicating it then?
We really are trying to do this as a recreation and replicate, not really make any changes, so everything looks seamless.
Okay, the looking seamless is the key to the success of something like this, of course, because
Absolutely.
you know, the minute those bricks are an off color or there's a different quality to them of any sort, then the whole illusion is destroyed. You know, I mean, to go through all this trouble to recreate, you know, I guess my concern is that, you know, the recreation be truly faithful in terms of the materials, because if it's not, then it, you know, there'll be a regrettable result.
Absolutely. Yeah. And even the brick itself, there's not just one type of brick on this building. We're going to have to get several different types to be able to replicate how the arch was done originally. And then the side detailing as well. So I am working on getting a physical sample pretty soon, something that we can show landmarks.
Okay, so you're representing that your intention is to truly be faithful to the existing.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
The front facade especially.
Yeah, thanks for those answers. And then we have a question from Brian, and then I believe Albert.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Davies, I may have missed, what is your role in this project?
So I'm the project manager on behalf of the architect. Architect is Angelo Costa, and we work for the owner. The owner bought this building in 2020 and started pursuing this project around that time.
Well, it certainly does appear that you've done a great job of restoring a building as it once was. And since the penthouse is not visible. That seems to meet many of our criteria from all the renderings that you give us. I noticed that you're relocating the fire hydrants on the first floor. I didn't see where those were being relocated.
Yeah, so in this photo, it's shown in the existing spot on the right-hand side on the ground floor, on the doors that open. And right now, one of the doors hits it. So we are looking to move it to the left-hand side of the building, all the way near the left window. So you might see there's a small standpipe or something right there, and we're looking to move it directly next to it.
Okay. And can you show me the first floor plan as
Sure.
proposed?
Oh, actually, I don't have the proposed on here. We have it on the demo.
Okay. So I guess the placement of the elevators and the stairs were such that the doorways on the right and in the middle are going to be restored and have the same functionality as they did originally. Do they meet ADA codes?
So this application, we're actually looking to leave the ground floor of the facade as is. I believe they did some kind of application about 5 or 6 years ago, and that's when they renovated and they turned it white. But historically, it wasn't that color. So this application, we're really trying to leave it as is and just focus on the upper floors. So the only thing proposed on that level would be moving that standpipe over.
Well, I would question that simply because this is such a major project and such a major addition to an existing condition that I believe that all ADA codes would have to be met in order for this project to move forward. So I would certainly want to suggest that you look at that aspect of the entrances.
Yes, absolutely. We'll look at those existing conditions. I know we have some diamond plate on the sidewalk there, and that's part of the discussion as to if we're going to restore anything on the ground floor. We'd probably do it as a separate application.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Albert,
My question is about visibility. Obviously, the 2 new stories are fully visible. The rooftop extension, however, we really have to take it at your word that it is not visible. Because how do you put a mock-up on a roof that isn't there? You tell us that it's 16 feet back and that should do it.
Yes, I hear you on this, and this is why we have been really extensive on studying this from a bunch of different angles with different programs and really modeling those neighbors just to make sure. We have talked to LPC about how we could try to show some kind of mock-up, and all we could come up with is maybe a rope going from one building to the other to show where the top of the facade is. But it seems very difficult to really try to mock up the penthouse when it is that far setback, because these existing buildings next to us are going to remain taller than us as is, even with the addition. Although zoning has changed and allowed buildings to go, I believe, up to 7 or 10 stories in this area, we're really not looking to capitalize on that and extend the building. We really just want to stick with the historic. So the penthouse, unfortunately, I'd say, yeah, you do have to take our word, but all I can say is that we have looked into this extensively and set it back further than needed to try to make sure this is taken care of.
Thank you.
Okay, that's it for committee questions. Now we have a question from the public, from Pete Davies.
Hi, Pete, you should be able to speak.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Great, thank you. Susan Gammy brought up something that was of interest to me, and that's I was glad to hear that you're trying to replicate and get the robustness of the Romanesque arches at the top. In terms of the brick, I would really, I think you should look at what was done at the top of the Puck building, where they did added brick on top, and they mismatched, and it's visible. So it sounds like you're really working to get that color right, but it really is noticeable when it is off. I do have a question about the ground floor. I know you say that this is not part of your current plan, but there was a 2008 COFA, which I just put the link in, which says that at that time, the work was to include they were going to include the capitals of the columns on the ground floor to replace those. And I noticed that wasn't done, even though the storefront was done. Do you have a plan to restore those lost capitals at the columns on the ground floor?
With speaking with the current owner, that it definitely is something he would like to pursue. However, it's just not part of this application. I'm hoping that we're going to get together a second application and be able to detail out that ground floor and return some of those elements. But right now, it's really just a big question as to if we can get the massing of this addition approved. And because he's owned the building so long, and this process is been a little tough going through COVID and trying to move this along, that he decided to separate that work from this application. But
Okay.
the owner really does want to restore, the whole facade and really match the character that everyone's looking for.
Okay, so this is a different owner than got that approval in 2008, which required the.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Thank you for your help, and I'm also glad to see that you didn't take advantage of the bad zoning allowance to go taller than the other buildings in the area. Thank you for that.
Thank you. And can I just ask again, did you say the Puck building with a P?
Yes, the Puck building about 10 years ago, they built new balustrades at the top to hide the penthouses. So the entire structure at the very top is a new different brick.
Okay, I
Around.
think we understand that.
Got
clearly.
it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there anybody else wish to speak?
There are no other raised hands.
Okay, I have just one more question. The rear facade, are you replacing all the windows or just replicating the windows on the addition?
We are looking to replace the windows. So
Okay.
in this
I just
slide,
wanted
it shows the replacement. The other one, it has some mismatched windows currently.
Right. Okay. I believe that's it, unless somebody else.
Okay, just one more quick question, and we're correct in understanding that the front windows are wood and the rear windows are metal. It's sort of
Correct.
to mimic what was already there, but to be fabricated out of metal.
Correct. Just the front facade, because it is at a fire escape, they are cladded in metal. So they appear metal, but the core of them are wood. So we are looking to replace them with wood.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, the last application is for 738 Greenwich Street. Susan, please.
Yeah, 738 Greenwich Street. The application is to reuse a 4-story parking garage as a multi-unit residential building. Restore the front facades, modify the ground floor infill, alter window openings and configuration for 3 windows, remove a portion of the rear of the building to provide light and air, and add a 1-story rooftop addition with required mechanicals and bulkheads, and excavate below the building to expand the existing cellar. So it's a fairly extensive application.
Big project.
Yep.
Okay.
I've,
Got people sorted out.
Yeah, could you add Bill Higgins and Mark Turkel as panelists?
Bill Higgins, and what's the second name? Mark?
Mark Turkel.
Okay.
No, sorry, my settings are not allowing me to share. So let me just.
Sarah, I can share.
That would be great. My internal system is not set up to share to Zoom for some reason. Thanks, Fear. I think Bill Higgins is gonna start us off.
Thanks, Sarah, and good evening, members of the committee. I'm Bill Higgins, principal of Higgins Quaysbarth and Partners, and we are the historic preservation consultants for this project. You've been talking with my associate, Sarah Scher, and Sarah will be giving you in detail some of the historical and appropriateness background. And then the architect's Leroy Street Studio will be represented by Mark Turkel and Veer Nanavati. And I will try to be brief and provide just the most general of introductions. It is really, as you have already heard, the proposal is a multi-unit residential rehabilitation, large units, full floor residential rehabilitation of this 4-story circa 1930 industrial / garage building. It is the kind of and scale and date of building that is, as we all know, quite common in this portion of the West Village. And that coexists with buildings of various scales and periods, and that also has been the subject of quite a few Landmarks Commission approved rehabilitations over the years. So the proposal here has several parts, as you've heard. First of all, it is fully built, covering the lot, and we are proposing to remove portions at the northern portion of the building, completely invisible from the street, in order to provide light and air. We are proposing to add 1 story of new habitable residential construction at the same ceiling height as the existing. portions of the building. And then above that, there will be only what is necessary for circulation and HVAC, et cetera. The exterior approach is not a strict restoration, but it does make much more legible the original character of the building. It removes some bad repairs and some incompatible alterations, particularly at the ground floor, that have occurred over the years. While this does certainly represent a visible rooftop addition, I just wanted to conclude by saying that this is a condition, again, as you know, what part of what makes this part of the village so interesting is the intersection of multiple grids over the years and the alterations that have taken place to some of the street patterns over time. And as a result of that, you have these kind of non-right angle conditions at many of the corners, including this one, which provides a sort of diagonal view where you do see the tops of the buildings and whatever might be existing or new at the tops of the buildings. And you also see the context of other historic buildings surrounding them. So the nature of the street pattern and shapes and dimensions here makes existing and proposed rooftop construction sort of almost necessarily visible. And what we have tried to do is to limit that, of course, to only one floor, and to design it in a way that is compatible with the historic character of the building, but there's also that quite purposely does not look as though there's an additional historic floor in brick. This is quite intentionally meant to be a compatible but designed modern addition. With that, I'll ask Sarah to expand a little bit on historical background of the building.
Sure. Thanks, Bill. Next slide. So the building is located at the corner of Greenwich and Perry Streets in the western end of the Greenwich Village Historic District, as Bill described. As you know, this area of the historic district is more commercial and industrial in nature, with a lot of stable buildings, garages, as well as storage and light manufacturing buildings. Our building here at the corner is a particularly robust garage building with the largest footprint on the block. It has a lot of features in common for early 20th century garages, such as, sort of constructed in brick with minimal ornament, large multi-light windows with a variety of masonry openings to serve utilitarian purposes. Next slide. Looking at the map at the top left corner, dating from 1828, you can see that that grid system that Bill was describing. There's the intersection of the older north-south streets in the lower western part of Manhattan that were maintained when the commissioner's grid was introduced to the island in 1811, creating these irregular block shapes that don't have 90-degree angles. This sort of opening up at the corners with a more of a V shape and diagonal views allows you to see taller buildings over shorter buildings in the mid-block. It also creates more visibility of what's happening at the roofs. In our building at the bottom left-hand corner, you can see to the left, you're seeing an LPC approved rooftop addition over 135 Perry Street that's created because of this view. And then to the right of our building at the newer construction at 744 Greenwich, you're seeing the penthouse over the top as well. Next slide. Here we have the original drawings for the building. It was designed in 1930 by architect George G. Miller as a garage primarily for commercial vehicles. And as you can see, the original drawings include some more masonry detailing, particularly around the ganged windows. This was value engineered out of the design by the time the building was built. Next slide. The 1940 tax photos of the building show an unpainted base, a very simple flat brick facade with these large multi-light windows. By 1937, the garage was converted into a truck garage, making the use of its very tall floor to ceiling heights. Next slide. As is typical with garage buildings, the openings at the base changed over time, some getting larger, some being eliminated, as we see on the left side of the sheet, to serve different utilitarian purposes. By the time of LPC designation in 1969, which we're seeing the photo for at the bottom right, the base is painted white with some signage above. Next slide. Here are existing conditions photos of the building. At the base, the brick is still painted white, which we're proposing to remove as part of the project. The door entrances include simple hollow metal doors, and garage entrances, which have non-historic roll-down security grills, all of which will be removed. Above, at the main part of the facade, lintel replacement was done with mismatched bricks, which you can see in the photos here. This is an open landmarks violation at the building and will be cured through the careful masonry restoration work done at the front facade, which includes replacing that matching brick, cleaning, repointing, and repair. The existing windows are also in poor condition and will be replaced to match existing. And at the top of the building, there are 3 bulkheads at the edges of the building. Along Perry Street, there's a stair bulkhead at the western end. And then on Greenwich Street, we have 2 bulkheads. One is an elevator bulkhead and one is a stair bulkhead at the center of the building. Next slide. And then in regards to the proposed rooftop addition, we have some LPC approved precedents to think about in the context of this application. 3 of these projects are on those angled corners described earlier, including 771 Washington, St. Luke's School, and 50 Hudson, where Landmarks has recognized that an addition would be visible and has accepted something contemporary in design. And then 85 Jane Street at the lower left corner includes a former garage building and stable building with a few visible rooftop additions. I think this, along with 771 Washington, showed that commercial/industrial character of this part of the Greenwich Village Historic District that has allowed for more visible design creativity from the street. And then in the next slide, I'm going to hand it off to Leroy Street Studio to present the full design. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Can you hear me? Can you hear us? Okay.
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. My name is Mark Turkel. I'm a partner at Leroy Street Studio, and I'm going to piggyback on the introduction that Bill Higgins just gave, and then introduce Veer Nanavati of our studio to talk you through the slides. Leroy Street Studio, our firm, is inspired by the neighbor's history, scale, authenticity, texture, and we're committed to protecting and preserving this. Our experience in the West Village goes back a couple of decades and includes significant masonry restoration, repairing, cleaning, salvaging, revivifying historic industrial buildings. This is a project that's extremely significant to us. For this project, we've assembled a top team of engineers, restoration and building science consultants with a depth of local experience. We are pursuing this project with the honest expression of minimal insertions using uncompromised architectural detailing and materials. We've created an addition that pays homage to the existing building's fabric by working in contrast with it. The goal is to renew, update the structure, and continue to contribute to the neighborhood as a humble, dignified, respectful neighbor for another 50+ years. With that, I'm going to turn this over to Veer to talk us through the slides.
Good evening. I'm just going to start with a simple explanation. I think both Sarah and Bill have alluded to us proposing to chop out the back of the existing building. This is primarily to create light and air for the proposed units. It's a 1,200 square foot plus area, 30 by 40. But it also adds to the interconnected green space in the back of the block and brings more light and air into the neighboring properties. The next couple of slides, I'm just going to explain the key parts of the project. So an overview, if you will, starting from the base and going up. As Sarah mentioned, we're proposing to restore the facades to a large degree and make some modifications which are in keeping with the utilitarian character and previous life of the building. And then, of course, there is an addition at the roof It's a single-story addition, set back from both streets by 15 feet, which both serves to differentiate it from the existing four-story masonry building, but also reduces its visibility greatly, as we will show you. The elevator and the elevator bulkhead and the mechanical enclosures have been centered in the street, in the block. And again, that's done in a manner that minimizes their visibility from the street. We have two dormers in the addition. One that is underbuilt for what is permissible by zoning and code, to hold it both down in height and further back from the street to make it minimally visible. And the other one engages with the brick facade and the existing bulkhead on Greenwich Street. These are axonometric diagrams of the rear of the building. On the left is existing, right proposed, showing what I was just describing, where we're planning to cut out the back of the building. We'll show you other slides explaining in detail some of the design at the back. But again, you can see we've kind of clustered the taller elements in the middle of the site. Here, these are street elevations showing the building in the context of the block. This is a Perry Street looking north. Above is existing and below is proposed. You can see the addition here, and you can also see that it's keeping in the, with the overall scale and the varied character of the block and the rooftop accretions that are seen in the neighborhood. You can also see, and it's something we'll demonstrate again in the presentation, it doesn't overwhelm the existing mass of the building, and nor does it change the building's character in a fundamental way. This is the street elevation along Greenwich. Again, you can see the addition, and you can see further additions along Perry that are taller, and the neighbor with their penthouse addition. Zooming in just on the proposed and existing elevations of the building, left is existing, right proposed. You can see some of the key features. So starting from the top, we really use the existing bulkheads of the building as generators to establish two datums. One on the lower bulkhead on Perry Street, which you can see here, establishes the top of the operable doors in the addition. And the taller bulkhead on Greenwich Street, we use to establish the roof line or the projected eave, which caps the building. The height of the addition, I think Bill mentioned, is in keeping with the scale of the building. So it matches the typical existing ceiling height, which both allows for consistent interior space from floor to floor, and is again in keeping with the overall character of the building. Sarah mentioned we're planning to replace all the existing windows with new custom thermally broken windows with minimal sight lines that will match as closely as possible the existing factory style windows. She also mentioned we plan to restore the base to its original unpainted condition. And we're currently conducting some cleaning tests to determine the best way to achieve this. The next few slides, we'll zoom in further on some of these details, but I'll show you Greenwich Street first. Again, you can see the datum that's established from the existing bulkhead, and we're planning to fill in the corner of that, which we'll show you in detail as well. I'll just go, in fact, straight into those details. So this is looking at the base of the building, a zoomed in or enlarged elevation. And you can see we're keeping the painted on lettering on both streets, Perry and Greenwich, with the character giving aspect to the building that's noted in the landmarks designation report. We're also planning to state the words parking and garage as is appropriate to the new use of the building. We're going to remove not just the paint at the base of the building, but also all the kind of ahistoric signage, the window ACs, ad hoc pipes, penetrations, jam conditions, the roller shutter enclosures above the garage door, etc. The main entry in the elevation below is centered on Ferry Street within an existing garage door opening, as you can see, and we're proposing to add a new steel and glass awning. On the left, one of the secondary openings is modified, and I'll show you that as well in greater detail. This is the Greenwich Street facade. Here you can see there's a new painted metal garage doors. And we've also adapted one of the existing secondary openings and made a few other modifications that I will zoom in on. Starting from the west side or left side of Ferry Street, here you can see that opening that we've raised the head of the opening to match the existing. Moving eastward, we're proposing to brick in half of one of the windows, and this is to do with an interior layout. This is still, the image on the left is still Ferry Street, the center. This is the new glass and steel entry and the new glass and steel awning. And as you can see, we're still borrowing from the industrial language of this industrial architecture, I should say. On the garage door, you can see we're retaining the corner protectors, repainting them. We have a new painted metal garage door. And here you can see the secondary door that we've again raised to line up with the window openings. And then on the right side of the page, you can see a simplified window and a new entry in one of the old garage door openings. One of the things to point out is that where we've made new interventions, we've set the new openings in further and lined the jambs with steel and of course the lintel with steel as well. Moving up the building, we have this proposed intervention on the third floor where we're proposing to drop the sills and change the window operation to permit the windows to open towards the interior. The drop sill would mean a railing is necessary, so we're proposing a glass guardrail. The genesis of this is, something we learned in COVID, that people really value outdoor space. And since the ground floor and the roof have closer access to outdoor space, we felt it was really something desirable to put in the units in the middle of the building. So there are two instances of this on Greenwich, and one instance of it on the Ferry Street facade. And we feel it's kind of in keeping with the utilitarian character and life of the building. This is an enlarged view rendering of the bulkhead on Greenwich Street. Left is existing and right is proposed. You can see we're infilling the corner that was kind of missing. And proposing to replace the multi-light window in this one instance with a single pane window to make it more consistent with the proposed glazing of the addition. Showing you the rear facade. These are kind of sectional views just to locate you. This is cut through Ferry Street, and you can see the neighbor, I think at 129, extending beyond where the proposed facade will now come. I'll go to the next slide where we have more direct views. So here, these are elevations directly facing the two rear elevations, which as you can see are kind of like an open L, and you can see the other elevation foreshortened. Some of the things we're doing here to note, we are proposing to use a different brick, again, to differentiate it from the historic fabric. We're proposing a lighter brick, which we think will reflect more light into the backyards of the building and of the neighbors as well. We're also staying consistent with the multi-light punched windows that you see on the front of the building that we think are not only appropriate, but also maintain a degree of privacy for both the building occupants and the neighbors, and is consistent with what you see in other buildings in the neighborhood. Another thing to point out is that we're proposing to gang up the windows, as you saw, slightly differently than the original design of the front facade. And here we're doing it horizontally with alternating courses of recessed and slightly projecting brick. This is kind of hovering bird's eye of the addition. So not really a realistic view. This is from the middle of the street. If you were in a little helicopter or drone, this is what you would see. So you can also see here how the two datums are generated by the bulkheads of the building. You can see clearly how the glassy addition is differentiated materially from the masonry mass of the existing building. You can also see the light colored metal louvers and cladding at the roof, which we feel help make them recede. And you can also see the projected eave that helps shade the glazing on the south and east exposures. Using the axonometric diagram again for a minute to just list some of the proposed materials on the building. It's pretty straightforward. We have a painted metal for the new windows, a light colored zinc for the rooftop and the rooftop additions and bulkheads, glass, of course, for the addition. The existing brick will be cleaned and repointed throughout. We're also proposing to find a much better match for the new, much better match of the existing for the new infill, and those kind of replacements that Sarah alluded to that were not done very well. And then, of course, a new precast concrete coping where it's needed. The rear facade, similar materials, but like we mentioned, a lighter brick. And that's really the key differentiating material at the back. These are street sections showing the visibility of rooftop additions when viewed over the parapet of the existing building. This is a section through Greenwich Street, the slightly wider of the two streets, where you can see there's minimal visibility of some of the rooftop elements, the bulkhead and the eave. You can also see the extent of the excavation in this section, which we'll show you another diagram for, and how the rear yards have been created. This slide shows the section through Perry Street, where barely the tip of the eave is visible over the existing brick parapet from across the street. This is an enlarged section of the addition. Here is the existing brick parapet. So this is the addition, and you can see we're maintaining a consistent ceiling height in the addition as with the floors below. The ceiling heights are large because it was a parking garage, as Sarah described. There's also a plan detail explaining how the new glazing will meet and interact with the bulkhead wall. You can also again see those two datums generated from the bulkhead quite clearly here. This is a cellar plan. On the left shows the extent of the small existing cellar, and on the right, the proposed cellar, which is to be expanded. I'll show you another slide explaining this diagrammatically. So here you can see a red dashed rectangle on the left side of the existing cellar, and we're proposing to go down in three depths or three elevations that are shown in these colors. Moving on to the last bit of the presentation, which is the Photoshop views of the mock-up. So photographs taken around the site from places of maximum visibility, and also to a point where the building, the addition, and the building are no longer visible. So this is north, walking north on Greenwich Street, looking south. You can see the building. It's here. It's the dark colored building with the mock-up. One of the things to note, which is worth pointing out, is that we had planned for some additional amenities at the roof in the form of a pergola and a fireplace mat. And when the mock-up was built, we reviewed it with the owner, and the ownership team felt that they were quite tall, those elements, and visible, and we have removed them from the ask of this presentation. This is walking further north, looking south. So here you can see, I think the point to note is the parts of the building that start becoming visible are actually disconnected from the building and just start becoming part of the streetscape and are hard to identify as being directly connected to the building. This is the view from Greenwich Street with your back against the building across the street. So as you could see in the street sections, it's just the leading edge of the eave and a tiny bit of the bulkhead that are visible. On Perry Street, with your back right up against the building, you can just see the leading edge of the eave barely over the parapet. Moving south on Greenwich Street and looking north, you can here clearly see the addition and some part of the bulkhead. This is moving eastward along Perry Street, looking westward. You can again see the addition, but you can also see the existing brick bulkhead. So, it's really kind of keeping in the scale of the existing bulkhead. This is further east, again looking west. You can see the addition. This is moving south again on Greenwich Street. This is perhaps the point of maximum visibility where you can see more or less the entire addition and the rooftop elements. Again, on the left, you can see the stucco flank of the existing bulkhead that we're proposing to replace with this glassy box. And that, I think, brings us to our last couple of slides. This is, again, the addition has been rendered into this view with, this is standing kitty corner with your back directly against the building across the corner on the southeast, sorry. And that's really our presentation. Thank you.
Chanel, you're muted.
Oh, sorry, I was muted after scolding people. Could you go to the slide that shows the infill for the garage entrances on the west side of the building? I think it's the one just before the one that showed the awning, the marquee.
This one?
Next one.
Okay. This
Right.
one is showing what are these two originally?
So I'll go back to maybe the zoomed out elevations. Those are the most. Here's the existing. Yeah.
Okay. Can you point out which is the? Oh, it's the other facade. This one I got okay.
Would you like to see the other facade?
It's the other facade that the question's about. Okay, here. And what is the black?
The black are these painted garage doors. Oops. Sorry.
There. Okay, I understand the comparison, but what is the blackness that we're seeing?
It's a black metal door, folding, upward opening garage door.
So are they garage doors?
Yes.
Oh, so there are two metal garage doors.
Correct.
Is that an elevator in the middle of? Or is it?
No, it's a service entrance.
Okay. And then the residential at the other, the northernmost opening. Okay, I was just confused as to which was what. That's fine. There was one more question. The material for the new facade in the back is all brick.
Yes.
And is that painted or are the bricks the color that we saw?
It's not painted, a light colored brick.
Okay. Okay, Susan. The committee.
Yeah, I have a question. When you're moving south on Greenwich and looking north and to the point of, what is clearly maximum visibility of the proposed rooftop addition, I mean, there's just no denying, it's kind of stunningly obvious and visible from that one point of view in particular. And I know, during the course of the proposal, references have been made to a sort of subset of rooftop additions within this particular part of the district, which have on occasion been somewhat more visible than in some other parts of the district. But I guess the school, I suppose, is the one. I mean, you did show some examples. And I guess the other examples were largely institutional usages. They were schools and there was another kind of more institutional usage. Is there another residential usage that you can point to that is equally visible?
Yes. Sarah, do you want to talk to this? But the one on the top left and the bottom left are definitely residential.
Yes, those two.
Those are both
projects.
resident, okay.
Yes.
All right, thanks. And my other question regarded the painted lettering, the very defining parking garage lettering. In couple of the renderings, in the existing, it's very much more apparent than in the proposed. Are you proposing to somehow diminish the quality of some of that lettering where it says parking very boldly and where it says garage very boldly? The renderings would indicate a sort of diminishment there, a sort of a changing it from an actual sign to a kind of ghosty image. Is there some particular treatment that you've got in mind there?
It's going to be a cleaning treatment, and like I think I mentioned that we're testing different products and different cleaning methods on the building currently. But yes, the intention is that the words parking and garage will both fade.
Okay, that answers that question. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Albert, your hand is up. Please go ahead.
Yes, I have several questions, actually. Back to the garage doors that remain. Are those still operable?
Yes, they will be operable garage doors.
And are they the same as the existing doors?
They are not the same as the existing, but they are closer to what was there historically than the roll-up shutters that were added at some point.
Next question is about the new rear yard. Could you show us that slide? I think there was only one that really showed us the rear yard.
Here you can see
well, really, two questions. The first is, does the creation of that destroy some historic material? Is there any structure that is being removed?
Yes, part of the old building will be removed to make space for the rear yard.
I don't think the landmarks documentation calls it contributing.
Right.
The second question is about access. Is it accessible? And if so, by whom?
The rear yards are meant for the use of the people in the building.
For all of the residents?
That's not entirely clear at this point, but there could be a version where part of it is accessible to everyone or just to the tenants or the owners of the units that abut them.
Okay. Could you go to the excavation again, please? There is only one slide of the excavation, as I recall. Of the basement. I'm just concerned about how deep it is and how extensive it is, and that's very difficult to see.
I think one of the things that is worth mentioning, Albert, is that the building to the north, the relatively new building, has a very deep cellar or basement, and we're just really matching their depth.
And what would the deepest part of the excavation, how much would that be? How deep would that be?
It's about 17 feet.
17 feet.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. There's one more question.
I have something on the excavation while we're there, if I could. Is the blue in this drawing under the garden?
Yes.
Or larger than the garden?
Yes.
And everything is being done within the confines of the original walls?
Correct.
Of the garage, okay.
Yes.
Is that it, Chenault?
Yes. Yes, thank you.
One more question. And this regards, I don't believe you said anything about the lighting on the ground floor. There appear to be as many as 8 instruments. Now, are all of those are to be removed?
The plan is to remove the non-historic existing lights, yes.
That's it. I think that's all from me. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
Brian, please go ahead.
Thanks for that presentation. I am very pleased with the restraints that you have used on this design. And so, you know, my questions are just kind of details that I wanted to clarify. I think what was just talked about as far as excavation is that this particular building had no basement whatsoever. Is that correct?
It had a small cellar on the left-hand side, on the west.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you can see, sorry, Brian, on the left-hand side of the page, that was the extent of the existing cellar.
Was that where there was a lift, elevator?
I don't think so. There's a staircase above it, and we think it's the old foundation of a very old, like the partial foundation of a very old building.
Okay, so then the first floor seems to have more than one level. Is that right? You're stepping down with the site. You're keeping
not at the first floor. That's the ground floor. Sorry, the cellar steps down. The first floor is more or less one level.
All right. Well, that's not going to be seen from the street anyway. I would say that the divided light window on the bulkhead on the top, I don't think I could approve that kind of a change, because it really changed the character of the facade that you're working so hard to replace the windows with in-kind character windows. And so that one just stands out like a sore thumb. And I think that's would be very unfortunate to mar that facade in that way. And I'm also curious about the balconies. You expressed how, in fact, we do appreciate fresh air much more than we used to. And I can appreciate the rationale for getting a few of those windows to be enlarged. But then why is it only on one floor? All of these balconies, front and back, are only on the third floor. And that doesn't make any sense.
They're the floors, Brian, that are furthest away from either the backyard or the roof. So the apartments closer to the backyard, the first and second floor, have much easier access to the backyard, and the apartments on the fourth and fifth floor have much easier access to the roof and open areas up there. So that was the thinking behind that.
I see. Okay, so it's not just full floor apartments, it's duplex apartments as well.
There are some duplexes probably in the final condition.
Okay, oh, and my last point is that I appreciate the fact that even though this penthouse addition is visible from the street, as you pointed out, and I do certainly appreciate the functionality of the overhang for all that glass. But that south, what you call a dormer, is an extension of the floor plan that comes almost out to the edge of the roof. And I just don't understand how that can be unobtrusive to the street.
I think it's low enough.
Yeah, I think we've held its height down considerably and also the length, but it's still held back from the edge of the street. So here you can see it's about 9 feet back, I think, 8 feet back, and it's only about 9 and something tall. So
and no overhang, right?
no
So-
overhang. That's a taut kind of volume.
That's unfortunate. So much else is so well done. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm just going to jump in for a moment and ask one question. In response to Brian's question regarding those enlarged windows on the third floor, your response was that those units were further from the rear yard, and so it would be nice to give them a little bit more light and air, which is understandable. But what I'm a little confused about was that I thought you said that it was unclear whether all tenants would even have access to that green space. So in view of that, I'm a little bit confused. Could you clarify that, please?
Well, so the plan is that the first and second floors will primarily use the rear yard. The apartments on the first and second floor, and the apartments on the fourth and fifth will primarily use the terraces on the fifth floor and the roof. Though the actual kind of, usage will, I think, depend on the final, owners of the building as much as anything else.
So the third floor is the only floor
Right.
where there's no outdoor space for the tenant.
Exactly.
Okay, so then in fact, that green space at this point is anticipated to really be accessed by the first and second floors exclusively.
Potentially, that's where it's not something for us to commit to. The owner still has to make a decision, and I think, once a condo board or a board is formed to determine these things, that'll have a bearing as well.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Eugene, you had a question.
Yes, and my question is maybe not directly related to the landmarking issue, but if you will indulge me, what is the total square footage of the building? It's a very large footprint building. think you're on mute.
Just give us 1 second to discuss. The floor plate's about 10,000, and I think the area is just above 40.
It's about 40,000. Okay. And how many units are planning to be built? Is that decided yet, or still?
It's not decided yet.
The current plan is 8. Is what we were-
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, has the committee finished? Before the public speaks, there's been a good deal of discussion about the selling of the building by the co-op that owned it, and it's being changed from a garage to an apartment. That's not something we're here to discuss. It's decided it's going to be an apartment building, and we're here to evaluate the apartment building that's been proposed, or the alteration to an apartment building. Okay, thank you.
All right, that's it for questions from the committee, but we have 2 members of the public
Okay,
who would like to speak. The first one is Catherine Schoonover, to be followed by Jeffrey Rowland.
Hi, I'm Catherine Schoonover. Thank you. Despite what the chair just said, I want to ask a question, which is how many?
could you speak up a little? I'm having trouble hearing you.
How many parking spaces are in the current garage?
This is not our discussion here. I explained that.
Well, yes, you did. But
If you have a question about the proposal
well,
itself,
one question I have is that it appears that there will be no parking in this building. Is that correct? Even for the people who live there.
Yeah, we're proposing 4 parking spots.
For 8 units of very wealthy people who undoubtedly own cars. You know, I mean, you're engaging, I think, in a certain amount of facadism by, you know, retaining the garage doors without having parking. Although I guess if you have 4 parking spots, that.
And we're using the garage doors for parking. None of the garage doors that are being proposed to be retained are just for an aesthetic consideration.
Okay. That's my question.
I would say further from the landmarks point of view, we appreciate the preservation of them because it clearly represents the history of the building.
Yes, it does, but it also gives a completely false impression. I mean, I guess I do have a personal interest in this since I park in this garage, but and I'm about to be evicted, but.
Okay, I'm sorry, I explained that's not the sort of thing we're going to discuss here.
Okay.
If you have a landmarks question, then we're happy to hear it.
No, I do not.
Okay.
All my landmarks questions have been addressed.
Thank you. The next person.
Okay, thank you. We've got Jeffrey Rowland next.
Good evening, and I have some comment, but mostly I'm not offended, surprisingly, about the great many of the changes to this building. In fact, I find the roof addition to be an elegant solution to trying to add on something and not take away from the character of the building. But to me, the changes in the facade windows, the heights on both sides, and the elimination or the infill of one of them on the Perry Street, I think it is, side, that to me so offends the character of the building as it was originally designed as a garage, that I can't imagine that would be acceptable to this committee. Otherwise, that's my comment.
Thank you. Are there others? Anyone else wish to comment?
No, I think that's that. I think, Chenault, we should make sure that the no-show applicant has indeed
Yes.
not shown. I don't see anybody here who seems to be representing that other application, but if there is somebody at this meeting who is here to present the one that we haven't heard yet, please identify yourself.
That's 242 Lafayette Street.
Looks like a straight up no-show, Chenault.
Okay. Going.
Yeah.
Okay, that then concludes the public session. I gather there are no members of the board here. I haven't heard anybody speak.
There are no members of the board
Okay.
here, correct?
Okay, then we'll begin the business session. Are people ready to go forward without a break? If you need to break, just break away and come back. Going in order. West 3rd Street. My proposal is that they come back with a full thing, because for the reason they can do this, but that we can't make a judgment about it without knowing even what the gate's attached to. Is there
Yeah,
any?
I totally agree, Chenault. I don't see how we can even opine on this. I mean, forget making it, forget considering whether it's contextual in the historic district. In this particular case, we can't even decide if it's contextual with itself.
Right.
We don't know what the other railings are going
Internally
to be.
consent.
Yeah. So I don't see how, I mean,
Okay.
obviously we're, sympathetic to the plight of people, living with constant intrusions, but I don't think we have enough information.
We'll have an elegant wording of that. Lafayette Street not present.
Hang on, before you, I think Valerie wanted to say something.
Thanks. On the not the Lafayette, but the previous one, we are going to communicate to the commissioners that we've asked them to come back, right, and ask them to not review the application until.
Yeah, that's what we do.
Okay, perfect. Just making sure. Thank you.
We never want them to hear anything that we heard without our having heard it. Lafayette Street. Absent. Greene Street. Let's deal first with the front facade, which is most of the application. It's clear, I believe, what they intend to do, and that they intend to be as historically faithful as possible.
Yes, I was, if we could just put a word in about the ADA accessibility, or there's such a tremendous amount of work and no attempt to make it any more accessible is a disappointment.
It would certainly be, if they intend to come with a first floor, that would be the time to do it, but it seemed wobbly as to whether that's going to happen or not.
I would say that not showing the relocated hydrants, the ones that are in front of the door now and blocking one of the doors, they say it's going to be relocated, and not to show it is a little bit of a incompleteness.
Certainly not.
Is that an issue for us or for the fire department?
Oh, it's a part of the exterior modification of a historic facade. So yeah, it's
hardly disqualifies. We'll mention it as opposed to saying they have to come back.
How they do it.
Zachary, I think the answer to your question is both.
Taking their word on the visibility of the rooftop extension, I think that's dubious.
We'll just say that they represented that. That landmarks people figured.
Without a
I
mock-up.
felt that their the first drawing that showed the sight line from across the street was convincing, and they really are fortunate from that point of view that the Other buildings are so tall, you couldn't possibly see it. So it's only the width of the building itself that would be the question. We'll mention that it was done by a study without, obviously without a mock-up. And we don't normally make a fuss about a mock-up for something that hasn't been built to be mocked up upon. Other Albert, other things?
That's it.
Are there other front facade things?
Chenault, I think it would be great if we could just put in something in the reso, just expressing our real concern about the fact that the materials that the applicant very sincerely indicated earnest interest in honestly replicating the brick on those top 2 floors. But I think it would be good for us to just note in our resolution, the
Concerned that the
critical importance, because the whole thing just rests. I mean, the success of this front facade entirely rests on that, because the design is fine, but it can, and I think we need to just note that in the
If
resolution.
it does, it would be almost better to have something different.
Exactly. Yeah.
It brought to mind the building that we've been much involved with on the corner of 4th Street and 11th. They've taken the blue paint off of it, and what is, to my mind, a plus is there are the 2 buildings, both of the stoops were removed years ago, and the replacement of the brick around where the front doors were is obviously different, which in that case I thought was nice because it shows that the doors used to be there. Historical.
Yeah.
In any case, other front facade, the penthouse, the visibility is the only question. We'll put that they represented, and the rear seemed to be without any difficulty or question. With these few mentions, it's approved, I assume.
Yes,
Yes.
If Brian says so, it's approved.
please.
Does anybody feel otherwise?
The Greenwich St garage. No one is allowed to talk about whether it was a good idea to change it from a garage to a building now. That said, I'll go in order of my notes from their presentation, I think, to make some order to this. Let me just put on tracking. Okay. Removing the white paint from the ground floor and replacing mix match brick. That seems to be the theme of the night. And then the window modifications. Is there objection finally to the window modifications that was much discussed?
Do we mean the one fill-in they had on the ground floor, or the ones in the third
the upper floors? I mean,
the upper floors.
We're going to get to that ground floor.
Okay.
Okay.
I have no objections.
That's the only thing
I would just say that they seem to gloss over the fact that they're using a glass railing in front of those casement windows that have been lengthened, and that doesn't always come off all that well on a historic brick facade.
I have never seen it on a facade. I thought it was always on top before. I was surprised in that. What do we want to express a preference for a metal railing? It's very frankly there.
I would suggest that they might consider it, putting some thin iron railings in front instead of a glass. I mean, it's just as a suggestion.
I totally support that Brian's suggestion because I honestly can't think of a situation where we've ever had, where I've seen anything like this within the historic district. And I think, you know, obviously there's credible justification for a rooftop addition that, and railing on a rooftop that is, you know, glass and a different materiality and all of that. But in terms of the actual front historic facade, I don't think we've seen that, and I don't like seeing it.
I agree. And I feel that there is a lot of this presentation that ignores the history of this structure as a 1930s, certainly non-residential structure. Can I ask the committee a question?
It's about the facade, you can.
It is.
Okay.
And that is, as always, with the canopy, with the glass and metal
We're
canopy.
going to deal with the ground floor. We'll come to that.
That's on the ground floor. I thought that's where we were.
We'll come to that in a moment.
Okay.
We're dealing with really the upper floors of the facade now.
Okay, well, let's do the canopy.
But we that's noted. After all the discussion, what about the penthouse?
Well,
I would say I'm not troubled by it.
Yeah, no, my first impression was very favorable because they obviously were very restrained about how much they put on top of this building. And the fact that they set most of it back 15 feet was a great first step. You know, and that's why I had to mention I was troubled by popping out this large extra footage of glass penthouse on the south side. It's personally,
the bulkhead replacement.
I'm sorry.
You think about the bulkhead replacement, the bulkhead window replacement.
That's a separate issue. I'm talking about on the south side. On the east side, replacing a divided light window with a sheet of glass, I think is totally inappropriate. It will stick out like a sore thumb. And it's an obvious part of the historic facade.
Right.
So I don't find that acceptable.
Denying that aspect.
I would not vote for it at all.
Okay, there being no disagreement, we'll deny the replacement of the window.
Brian, could you clarify what your other concern?
And then I misunderstood what you were talking about. So go back, Brian, and finish.
Okay. Well, on sheet 27 of what was sent to us is a bird's eye view, which means it's up in the air, looking at that corner, and it shows the penthouse very clearly in the rendering. They didn't really go into much detail about what the railing on top of the parapet was going to be. Did they? Does anybody remember? It looks like a light colored metal horizontal bars. And so I'm not so sure about that. That seems like that.
We want to recommend something other than what it looks like.
I think that railing on top of the parapet should be set back so it's not so prominent on the parapet wall. But if you wanted me to clarify what I was saying about the pop out of the penthouse on the south end, the south side of that penthouse, it really does come very close to the parapet wall, and it's going to be very visible. Yeah, it just seems contrary to the rest of the setback and the roofs and the way it's designed.
I'm not looking at things, but is that part of the visibility problem?
It is.
Okay,
Yes, because it's the south side.
right, which is the most
Most visible.
of the quirky angle, it's the most visible down the way.
Right, on page 34, that's the view.
Are you able to share it, Eugene?
Well, let me see if I can share it.
Must have rights to.
And I'm just sharing what we were given. Oh no, I don't know why I shared a whiteboard. Hold on.
Well, Eugene is doing that. Brian, I have a question for you. I definitely hear what you're saying and agree with it. My question for you is, what do you think would be desirable in our resolution there? Then that the entire south facade be more pulled back, or what is your thought on that?
Yes, I would have the setback more uniform on that south facade.
Yeah, is this like a sunroom sticking out from the already all glass?
It looks like it, yes.
Yeah, that the other view of it made it look like it looked like a skylight to the floor below, so I couldn't quite understand it.
Hmm.
But oh, I can see there it's not as high as the height of the.
Yes, correct. It's
So we
stepping
want that to
down,
be,
but it's stepping
whatever they
down.
do, we want that to be less visible.
Yes,
And what is it called?
Is that what they were calling a dormer?
they did call it a dormer, which
So too, that's why I couldn't figure
confused
that
me,
out.
but
It confused me too, but I do believe that that's what they were referring to as a dormer. And I think that that is what you're finding problematic, Brian, correct?
that's correct.
Yeah, I do. I completely agree with that. And I also agree with the fact that the parapet railing
It's
is
very prominent.
too prominent.
Right, and here you can also see that single pane of glass, which does stick out.
Yeah. Those are the three elements that I would object to.
Right, and with the third being the replacement of the window.
Yes,
And it just doesn't make any sense because they're so careful to reproduce, even though they're not as big as they might be for
exactly.
residential downstairs. Those
I
people
agree with
from all that
everything you
awful
said
stuff.
about the penthouse. It certainly does not look like 1930.
No.
Well, it's not trying to, and I think, the applicant made that clear, and it's very honestly not trying to, so, and there are other examples, within the district.
And there's
But
a
they're typically
cleanness-
not as visible, that's all.
there's a cleanness to it that is even more so without the sticking out of the dormer. Can we move on to the chopping off of the corner of the building, and the wall is to be light colored brick, which makes total sense. And then there's a garden that will have either few or many people having access to it.
Well, of course, the backyard is totally unseen from any public right away.
Yeah.
It does, I have to say, I have to commend them for adding more light and air to that donut. So I find it, I have no objection.
It was not an altruistic activity, however,
No.
for the benefit of the donut. And the windows are particularly not showing. I'm sure they have more logic than we can tell from outside. So there's no nothing to be said about that if no one's okay. Next, if we can start with the south elevation. This is the order of the presentation, which converts the one garage entrance to the public entrance, the residential entrance, and the side door to some sort of a service entrance.
Can I go back to the residential entrance? And
yeah, that's what we're on.
specifically,
The one on the south. It has a yeah.
Is a better slide to look at.
Well, the other side we don't object to unless we're going to object based on
Yeah.
this.
the other one looks better.
Slide 16.
Where's the canopy? That's on the south, right?
Yeah.
That
South,
one.
yes.
Sorry. Yeah,
It's on
south
Perry
side.
Street.
Okay,
There you go.
Albert.
Yes. It's an old question. Are these glass and metal intrusions too intrusive for the Greenwich Village Historic District? I would say especially on this 1930s industrial structure. And of course, the question is, does anybody agree with me? Apparently not.
They certainly are different from they don't attempt in any way reference the windows that are there.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be, maybe we could add something about attempting to do what you just said, reference the window style and still maintain glass and steel, because the windows are essentially glass and metal, so. As a compromise.
Yeah, but even if the doors are solid, if the sides were just more plate glass, south side.
Yeah, I would agree with the suggestion that was made that for individual windows next to the residential entry would be a divided light similar to the rest of the ground floor windows. That would be at least an improvement.
Yeah.
As far as the doors themselves, yeah, I don't know.
But the side lights above. I'm not sure what that other entry door. Oh, maybe that's the maisonette private entrance or something.
Yeah, that's the impression that I get is the two ends of this whole facade, the far west and the far north, seem to be for the ground floor or the lower levels of apartments. It seems to read to me that you've got one apartment on the south side and one apartment on the north side for the first two floors.
Right.
But
They seem to
I
be.
guess that doesn't matter, does it?
They seem to be sorting out the outside and then work in.
That's an entry for the new open space, the new yard.
I'm concerned about this meddling with the sign.
I was going to speak to that as well, Chenault. I don't think that that maintaining the story of this building, which is very clearly a purpose-built parking garage, is important. And I am concerned about the diminishment, the potential diminishment to a degree that is unknowable at this point of these signs, I think that I would like to see that we recommend that they stay intact.
Yes. And we have the Northern Dispensary to prove the point, and we have the row house on, is it 9th Street? Oh, not the row house, but the garage house. The house that used to be a carriage house on, I believe, 9th Street. That
Right.
had-
And I just am very concerned about whatever the effect of some sort of like faux ghost,
Yeah, exactly.
effect is, feels, it just feels a little frighteningly theatrical.
Right.
So just a question for me. I'm looking at the street view right now. And it's pretty clear the signs are up today are not original signs from the 1930s. They were put at some other point. We're going to ask them to keep signs up, say that there's parking available in the building, even though there is no parking available in the building.
Oh,
No, that's not what we're talking about, Zachary, but I understand why it seems like that's what we're talking about. Where you see where it says 738 Greenwich Village, garage, 742.
Oh, yeah.
And you see existing and proposed, and you see how it's kind of ghosting out in the proposed.
Oh, a little bit. Yeah. Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about at any rate.
Yeah, totally with you on that. Sorry.
A little odd. I mean,
also not a destination. If it was going to be a supermarket, they might well object to having the word garage smeared on it. But once people live there, they live there, and people who come there come to that address and find the people they want to visit. So
Is all the other signage for the garage gone, like that blade sign that says park on it?
I
don't
noticed
remember.
on one of the renderings, I thought they had kept the blade sign on the corner, but I don't see it here. But I thought on one of the other renderings I had seen them keep one of the blade signs.
Yeah. Yeah, they show
I could be wrong.
the corner view of the building.
Yeah, it was a corner view somewhere.
Keep going.
Going back?
I have it number 10.
I don't think the blade sign is there in the, whoa, wait a minute.
Proposed.
There it
Proposed.
is.
Here, it's here. The blade sign exists.
Yes.
But in other renderings, it's gone. It's actually unclear.
I will consult with them about that, because I hadn't noticed, but this is it either is there or it's not there.
Yeah, right.
Well, it's both.
My suspicion is it's just careless rendering.
And that's my suspicion.
Well, if it wants to be kept, do we want it to be kept? If they want to keep it, assuming that it's not some new.
I think for me, that might be a bridge too far, in that if you're driving down the street and you see that sign, you're probably going to think there's a garage there.
Oh, and you see the garage doors also.
Yeah.
And the curb cut.
It somehow spoils the new building.
So
They're taking out all the others, so there's not much context for it.
Yeah, they're saying it's not proposed to remain in the chat, I believe.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So slide 10 it's a rendering.
So we want the braid sign to be eliminated if indeed it's there.
But she said that it's not intended to be to remain.
Oh, I missed that. I had a lot of trouble hearing after Bill spoke.
Oh no, just in the chat just now, Chenault, you didn't miss it.
Yeah, she wrote, it is not proposed to remain.
Okay. That's good to know. I'm sorry, I'm trying to find the west facade. You all have been so generous with writing. Okay, the west facade, if we could have the picture of it. Going from north to south, the first garage door is to be the entrance, and I assume we'd have the same notes on the glass.
I would agree.
The residential entrance to
Yes,
reference.
I think so, Chanel. Does anybody disagree with that?
No, I agree.
I know that this is a rendering, but the black just looks like a terrible void.
Yes,
I thought it was very dark.
yes. Once again, it is
It's
very
basically leaving what's there. I mean, replacing the doors,
yeah.
but we might suggest the doors and to be more harmonious with the facade.
A neutral color.
Or just unpainted metal.
Are they metal or wood?
They're
Oh, I don't
metal.
know. Actually, that's a good question. I assumed they were metal.
They made the statement that they were metal, painted metal.
Yeah,
So it could be any color, and so that could be a brick red or a gray or
Green.
something, because so that doesn't become the point of that facade.
Something that does not call attention to itself
Unduly.
unduly.
Now, sort of out of order, we got onto the balconies. In the end, the subject of the railings came up, but is the fact of the balconies objectionable anywhere that they're proposed? Eugene, can you find the render?
Remember what they look like.
There's the, is this the one, the rendering of the glass?
Yep.
yes.
Right.
I don't object to the windows. I just have my concerns about the glass railing and would suggest that they be metal.
Well,
I feel the same way.
the altar, I assume, is metal, so we would recommend denial of the glass, and it'd be replaced with metal railing that would be more harmonious with the building.
Yes.
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 And Susan will get to check my spelling of harmonious twice in this resolution. The last note I have, I've put Ur, and I don't think we have any Egyptian water vessels, so I don't know what that is. Is there anything else that has been omitted that anyone wishes to speak about, pro or con?
Are you saying, do you intend to say anything about the excavation, Chanel?
Oh, that's what I started out in this type. It is within the walls, which is the thing that most concerns us about the excavations. And it's doing various things in various places of the building.
Well, we usually have some language that says, yeah, it has to be,
careful.
yeah, properly engineered and protecting all the adjacent properties as well as this property. I think should cover it from my viewpoint, because
And it's going to be much
there's
less.
no
of a
pool in the
problem.
backyard. Thank goodness.
Does anyone wish to speak about any aspect of it more or differently, or?
I might like to suggest that we also just, commend them for the overall design, because I think, this could have easily turned into a much less, sensitively designed adaptive reuse. And I think, we're clearly suggesting some modifications that are important to us, but overall, I think,
It preserves
it's worth saying something positive.
It preserves the building in its historical context,
Yeah.
or maybe it's historical use.
I think that's Bill Higgins, to whom we owe some
This
thanks.
is the kind of thing that he just does superbly, and taking something and making it useful without redoing it.
Yes.
Yeah, I was quite surprised, by the way. I fully anticipated when the garage sold that this would be torn down and there would be a much taller, a modern building put in its place. So
I thought so too. I quaked before I opened it up. So I had seen
Anyway, the baby didn't get thrown out with the bathwater. So, I think we should commend them for protecting the baby.
I just can't see a 1930s Model T Ford pulling up under that canopy.
Well, Albert cars have been updated since then, so we need to make the building too. Maybe there'll be electric connections. I was surprised so few parking places. I would certainly want one if I lived there. That concludes. We know nothing about next month. I have asked for our usual slots next month. It happens that because Thanksgiving is, I think, the last day of the month, we get pushed unusually early in November with even the second meeting. And I'll talk to the commission about that to point out our trouble from this side, and because they speak to the applicants about when it's to be heard. So to be sure that people get in early in the month if they want to be heard by the commission.
Not on election day, please.
No, there's no Tuesday meeting, so.
Oh, we've had Tuesday meetings.
No, I mean, not as planned for next month. So it should be okay. Anything else? Oh, yes, there's one thing, sorry. Brian had some suggestions of modifications about the budget proposal.
I think that was Brendan.
Brian,
yeah.
Well, one of the B people. It was essential to make the website more useful and friendly, which would fit in with the part about engaging the public in the activities. So without objection, I'll put that in tomorrow when we discuss the more specifically, it was posting the applications that are approved by the applications that are approved by the staff.
Oh, staff.
So that one knows more than just that, those vague titles, what's going on. And various other things. And it all has to do with the website. Okay, thank you, Eugene, for being the meister.
No
And
problem.
Thank
we
you.
will meet again on, I believe, our usual Thursday, the way the calendar falls. It'll be final to decide tomorrow if there's any impediment to that. Okay.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you.
Thank you.
Night,
Thank
everybody.
you,
Bye.
Chanel.
Good night, everyone. Thank you, Chanel.
Yes. Is somebody
Good night,
address?
everybody.
Oh, good night.
Good night.